So I'm really about to piss a lot of people off, and I really don't care because that's what I do. Right? I piss people off and make beautiful babies. Now, I am praying that Carmelo Anthony's family sues the bejesus out of the New York Post for that whack article about them buying homes and multiple cars with the money that was donated. Because guess what? They never even withdrew the money from the gifts and go. So that's number one. And
Courtroom is hushed, every seat filled as new documents land on the prosecutor's desk. Documents that could unravel everything you thought you knew about this case. You're hearing whispers ripple through the gallery. Allegations that the $10 million raised through a massive GoFundMe campaign, money the public believed was going toward legal fees and family support, was funneled into a complex web of offshore accounts. Screens light up as investigators pull up transaction logs, showing large wire transfers to shell companies in the Cayman Islands and Belize, often within days of the donations hitting the GoFundMe account. The names tied to those accounts? Directly linked to Karmelo Anthony's parents. What makes this even more damning is the timeline. These transfers align perfectly with key moments in the murder case against their son, including just days before pivotal hearings. It's not just the financial trail-raising eyebrows, it's the secrecy. No mention of these transfers appeared in the public accounting of the funds, and donors say they were assured every dollar was being used to fight what the family called an unjust case. You see one of the prosecutors glance toward the jury box, as if to silently say, "This changes everything." Social media is already ablaze. Screenshots of the leaked bank records are being shared faster than they can be taken down. Some users claim the offshore accounts could have been used to pay for witness tampering, while others speculate they were simply a way to hide assets before any potential asset seizures by the court. And now the question swirling in everyone's mind is unavoidable. If the people closest to Karmelo were moving this much money in secret, what else has been hidden from the public and from the case itself? Would you still stand behind the family if these allegations prove to be true? Reporters swarm the courthouse steps, microphones thrust forward as the lead investigator finally steps into view. He doesn't smile, doesn't acknowledge the chaos, just reads from a statement that confirms what everyone's been speculating. The Department of Justice has officially opened a financial crimes probe into Karmelo Anthony's parents. The alleged laundering of GoFundMe funds into offshore accounts isn't just a side scandal anymore. It's now a federal matter, carrying the potential for decades in prison if proven. You catch the way the investigator chooses his words carefully, making it clear this isn't a random audit. We have identified multiple transactions that appear to be structured with the intent to conceal the origins of the funds, he says. He pauses, letting that sink in. The funds in question were raised from members of the public under specific pretenses related to legal defense and family support. The timing of this announcement couldn't be more devastating for the Anthonys. With the murder case already casting a shadow over the family, this new investigation could be a crippling blow to their credibility in court. Defense attorneys scramble, some visibly frustrated, as they now have to address an entirely new front of accusations, ones that paint their clients as not just desperate parents, but as deliberate manipulators of public trust. In the crowd, former donors are furious. One woman clutches her phone, scrolling through her donation receipt, shaking her head in disbelief. "I gave my last $100 thinking I was helping them fight for their son," she says. "Now I find out my money might be sitting in some island bank account?" And the ripple effect is already starting. Rumors spread that GoFundMe itself may freeze the remaining balance of the campaign pending the investigation. If that happens, the family won't just face a loss of public sympathy. They'll be cut off from one of their most significant financial lifelines in the middle of the trial. The question is no longer if this revelation will affect the murder case, but how much damage it will do when the jury hears it. Inside the courtroom, the prosecution wastes no time weaving the financial scandal into their murder narrative. They project a massive timeline on the screen. On one side, key events from the murder case: the stabbing, the arrest, the pre-trial hearings. On the other side, a series of bank transfers highlighted in red, each one linking to offshore accounts just days before or after those pivotal moments. The visual is damning, and you can feel the tension as jurors lean forward, eyes locked on the screen. The lead prosecutor's voice cuts through the silence. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this is not about a clerical error or poor bookkeeping. This is about deliberate deception." He paces slowly, pointing to a transfer of $750,000 to a Belize-based shell company just 2 days before a key witness suddenly changed their statement. The implication is left hanging in the air, heavy and unavoidable. Defense attorneys push back, arguing that the transfers were for family investments meant to safeguard the money from bad publicity and hostile creditors. But the prosecutor counters immediately, revealing that several of these offshore accounts had no history of legitimate business activity before the GoFundMe money arrived. In other words, they were empty vessels, perfect for hiding cash. The gallery is buzzing with whispered speculation. Some believe this proves the Anthonys would go to any lengths to control the outcome of the case. Others think it's just another layer of smear tactics designed to turn the jury against them. But the optics are brutal. Screenshots of the projected timeline are already circulating online, paired with captions accusing the family of using blood money to manipulate justice. By the time the jury files out for a recess, the mood has shifted. This isn't just about whether Karmelo is guilty of murder anymore. It's about whether the people closest to him have been orchestrating an entire web of deceit behind the scenes. And for the first time, you can see it in the jurors' faces. The possibility that this scandal could tip the scales. Outside the courthouse, the scene is pure chaos. News vans line the street, their satellite dishes pointed skyward, while camera crews jostle for position. Protesters on both sides chant over each other, one group holding signs demanding justice for Austin Metcalf, the other defending Karmelo's family and calling the financial allegations a distraction. The sound is a wall of tension, bullhorns, chants, and the rapid clicks of camera shutters capturing every second. In the middle of the crowd, a handful of former GoFundMe donors have taken matters into their own hands. They've printed out enlarged screenshots of the alleged bank transfers, each one stamped with the words, "Where's our money?" in bold red letters. They're not just angry, they're organized, passing out flyers with QR codes linking to leaked documents and calling for a class action lawsuit against the Anthonys. The media frenzy is relentless. Talk show hosts are already dissecting the scandal in real time, with financial crime experts explaining how offshore accounts are used to obscure the trail of illicit funds. One panelist on a primetime segment says flatly, "If these allegations are true, this family isn't just fighting a murder case. They're staring down a money laundering indictment that could carry a longer sentence than the original charge." Inside, the ripple effect is starting to show. Jurors can't be shielded from the atmosphere outside forever, and lawyers know it. Defense attorneys request a gag order to limit the damage from media coverage, but prosecutors argue the public has a right to know about the financial misconduct tied to a case funded by public donations. The judge takes the motion under advisement, but her stern expression suggests she knows the genie is already out of the bottle. By the end of the day, the scandal has become bigger than the courtroom itself. It's no longer just legal proceedings. It's a national spectacle, with public opinion swinging wildly by the hour. And every new headline makes it harder for Karmelo Anthony's parents to convince anyone, jurors, donors, or the public, that they're the victims in this story. Back in the courtroom, the prosecution drops its next bombshell. A forensic accountant takes the stand, holding a thick binder of evidence. He walks the jury through each questionable transfer, not in broad strokes, but in painful microscopic detail. Dates, amounts, account numbers, nothing is left vague. He even projects a digital map tracing the movement of the GoFundMe donations across borders, showing how money left U.S. accounts, bounced through multiple intermediary banks, and landed in tax havens. What stuns the room is his explanation of the layering process, a classic money laundering tactic. The funds weren't just sent once and left to sit. They were moved in smaller increments, transferred between multiple shell entities, and occasionally funneled back into U.S. accounts under the guise of consulting fees or charitable donations. According to him, these were deliberate steps to obscure the origin of the money, a method that requires planning and knowledge of financial evasion techniques. The defense attempts to shake his credibility, suggesting that complex transfers could be standard practice for international investments. But the accountant fires back with a single, damning fact. Several of the receiving accounts were opened within days of the murder and had zero activity until the GoFundMe funds arrived. That timing, he says, is statistically impossible to dismiss as coincidence. In the gallery, people exchange wide-eyed glances. Even those who had been skeptical of the allegations are beginning to shift in their seats. The jurors, too, seem visibly affected. One woman in the front row scribbles furiously in her notebook, while another leans back with arms crossed, staring intently at the defense table. When the accountant finally steps down, the air in the courtroom feels heavier. The prosecution has just planted a seed that will be hard to uproot. That the financial misconduct wasn't sloppy bookkeeping or panic-driven mistakes. It was a calculated, deliberate operation. And if the Anthonys were capable of engineering that kind of deception, the jury has to wonder, What else might they be capable of? The tension hits a breaking point when the prosecution unveils a piece of evidence no one saw coming. A series of private text messages allegedly exchanged between Karmelo Anthony's parents and an unnamed financial advisor. The messages, pulled directly from a court-ordered phone extraction, aren't just about money. They reveal discussions about keeping certain people quiet and making sure this never traces back. The courtroom reacts instantly. You hear a sharp gasp from the gallery, followed by a low murmur that the judge has to slam her gavel to silence. Prosecutors waste no time framing the narrative. These weren't innocent chats about bill payments or budgeting. They were strategic, coded conversations about controlling information and protecting assets. One particular text from Karmelo's father reads, "Move the last 300 before Friday. We can't risk them freezing it if things go sideways in court." The defense jumps to object, claiming the messages are being mischaracterized and that the language could refer to any number of unrelated matters. But prosecutors counter with timestamps that line up perfectly with suspicious bank activity, making it hard to argue the context away. They also point out that the so-called financial advisor was later flagged in another federal investigation for facilitating illicit transfers. Outside the courthouse, this revelation explodes across social media, hashtags demanding a deeper FBI probe trend within minutes. And influencers with millions of followers are sharing the screenshots, calling it the smoking gun in the GoFundMe scandal. Jurors are told to disregard outside chatter, but everyone in the room knows the damage is done. These messages make the laundering allegations feel less like speculation and more like a coordinated cover-up. And while the defense tries to shift the focus back to the murder trial itself, the prosecution has successfully blurred the line, making it nearly impossible for the jury to separate the murder charges from the financial scandal now hanging over the entire Anthony family. As the day winds to a close, the judge calls for adjournment, but the atmosphere inside the courtroom feels anything but settled. The Anthony family huddles with their attorneys, their whispered conversations tense and clipped. Karmelo's mother keeps her head down, avoiding eye contact with the gallery, while his father stares straight ahead, expression locked and unreadable. The weight of the day's revelations, offshore transfers, forensic accounting breakdowns, incriminating text messages, seems to press down on them from all sides. Outside, the courthouse plaza has transformed into a media circus. Satellite trucks glow under floodlights, and news anchors deliver live updates against the backdrop of chanting protesters and curious onlookers. Some carry signs calling for justice for Austin Metcalf. Others accuse the legal system of targeting the Anthonys unfairly. The split is raw, emotional, and loud. Meanwhile, in quiet corners of the internet, the story has taken on a life of its own. Threads dissect every screenshot, video clip, and document, with amateur sleuths creating elaborate theories about how the GoFundMe money was moved and what it might have been used for. In some posts, the murder trial feels secondary, overshadowed by the narrative of a family allegedly running a shadow operation in plain sight. As the Anthony family leaves through a side entrance, escorted by security, reporters shout questions they don't answer. Every lens and microphone is aimed at them, but their silence only fuels the frenzy. Across the city, donors refresh their bank accounts, wondering if they'll ever see their contributions